Welcome to Why I Left, a podcast that explores the Great Resignation. I'm your host, Brian Aquart. Join me as I chronicle real stories from real people about the reasons they decided to leave their jobs during the pandemic and what has happened since. Hello, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of Why I Left. In today's episode, I chat with Yasmeen Hassan. Yasmeen is an Emmy Award-winning news anchor and co-founder of HCue Consulting. After 15 years in media, the grind became too much. Let's go check out her story. All right, welcome back. So our guest today is Yasmeen Hassan. Yasmeen is the co-founder of HCue, a company helping professionals create, refine, and deliver their messaging. Now, after experiencing a lack of fulfillment with her professional life, despite ascending to a great role, she decided it was time for a change. So I'm really excited to have her share her story with you all. So hi, Yasmeen. Thanks for joining me today.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to sit down and talk with you.
Absolutely. So obviously this show is about the Great Resignation. We'll get into those things. But first, tell us a little bit about, your upbringing and where you currently call home.
Sure. I am actually from Cairo, Egypt. My family is Egyptian. We moved to the United States when I was about 4 years old and grew up all over the East Coast, moving around quite a lot. Went to the University of Arizona, bear down, and then started my career in broadcast. I started off as a news producer, working behind the scenes and writing, and then I transitioned to on air. A fun fact people don't know, the producers have to get in hours before the anchor. So if you're working on the morning show, the producers are coming in 11 p.m., midnight, 1 a.m., when the dang anchors get to come in at like 3 a.m., which sounds, I know it sounds not great, but sounds like a dream compared to 1 a.m. So after a couple of years of producing, I was like, you know what? I could sleep in and do what they're doing. And so I transitioned into being on air and as an anchor in Washington State, Las Vegas, Sacramento, and then most recently in Chicago. And then why I left, I ended up, eating a lot of meals alone and waking up, like I said, in the middle of the night. So I resigned and moved down to Austin, Texas. And now I am running a communications consulting firm, and I'm awake during the day and at night I'm asleep. So doesn't sound super glamorous, but it's a dream coming from the news world.
No, definitely. And, when you think about, look, you've been in media for quite some time. What were some of the things that really drove you about that profession that you really loved?
I mean, getting to tell people's stories is such an honor and a privilege, and being able to be on the sidelines of history, really. I know where I was during every major event for the last 15, 16 years, whether I was reporting from the scene or reporting in the studio about it or gathering information. It's definitely something that stays with you, and it feels almost like public service, trying to make sure everyone has the latest information, the most accurate information. And like I said, being able to tell people stories who were there during those events.
And, when you think about that, I'm always fascinated by not only the anchors, but also some of the sideline reporters who kind of go out and do all the things, right? Of the stories that you've covered, what has been one that's been like most or one of the most memorable things that you've been a part of?
I want to say something glamorous like, I was at the Super Bowl and covering Congress and talking to governors. Now I just sound like I'm like humble bragging. But yes, we get to do all these really fun, cool things. I rappelled down Caesar's Palace, like pretty cool things that I don't know if I would have been able to do had I not been a reporter. But I have to tell you the most memorable story. I interviewed an 11-year-old boy who was in the hospital, and he had a rare disease, and we talked to him, and there's no, big twist. There was no, nothing salacious about it. It was just a sweet little boy and what he was going through. And we met his family and spent the day with him. And then after the story aired, his mom texted me. I still have that text, and it was maybe 8 to 10 years ago, texted me and said that he had a really hard day today and he rewatched our package, our story, multiple times, and it made his day a little better. And I'll never forget that. And just being able to make some kid who's especially going through something so difficult make his day even 1% better is really something that holds close to my heart.
Absolutely. I love that. And so now I would love to take you back a little bit, right? So let's go back to March of 2020. COVID really hits us. We're introduced to the pandemic. Talk a little bit about how the pandemic affected you.
So in March, I was anchoring at CBS Chicago and I was sent home. So I was anchoring the news from my kitchen and it was the middle of the day. I'm sure everyone has a similar story where they're like, so go home. Here's a cell phone. We're going to figure it out. And I took my laptop and, and made all those strange decisions. And it was, an adjustment, but everyone was doing it and all of that. But as time went on, no one's going outside, no one is interacting. It gets to you, right? And it gets to everybody. I'm not trying to say that my story is unique, but at the same time, I was also going to sleep at 6 p.m. and waking up at 2 a.m. And it was a grind. It was a grind, and it was fulfilling being able to tell the public during a time where people wanted information so much, what we knew, what they needed to know, how to hopefully potentially keep people safe. But, after a while, it was, I'm alone, I'm alone every day. And it eventually really, it sat with me. When you work in news, you're usually on like a 2 or 3 year contract. So your whole career, you are moving. So every couple of years, I'm leaving my friends and family and apartment and all of those things to advance and advance and advance. And, finally I made it to Chicago, which is what I worked for my whole adult life, really. And I got there and it was great. It was a good job, but I was still alone, and it definitely took some time and thought to think all these sacrifices. Am I happy right now that I've reached what I've been working for? And while I did have career satisfaction with CBS, and I have nothing bad to say about CBS or the news industry or my previous stations, it wasn't enough to give up dinners and birthdays and Christmas and Thanksgiving and every holiday you can think of. So I resigned.
No, definitely. And, I hear a lot about that. And I've heard similar sentiments as I've been, recording this season and even in season 1. And so when you think about all of those things, the eating alones, the missing birthdays or missing events, now you're at home. How did the pandemic really start affecting your relationship with your job?
While I was at CBS, it was, I don't want to say I was resentful, but it made you think every day you were going to work. I'm like, is this worth it? Is it worth everything that we're going through to get to report on the news? And again, I love the news. I'm still a news junkie. I'm still on Twitter way more than I should be. And I want to know everything that's going on. But the relationship, what I found so satisfying, maybe when I was younger, was no longer giving me a satisfaction in the broad scheme that was filling every bit of what I was looking for. And maybe that was the pandemic, maybe that was getting older, maybe it was a combination of all of the above. I definitely felt something was missing and I needed to, I don't want to complain and do nothing. So I needed to figure out what I was going to change to make sure that, I was satisfied or I was happy or, I was at least getting more than 4 hours of sleep a night.
Oh, definitely. So looking back, what is one thing you would have done differently during the pandemic?
Oh, that's a good question. One thing I would have done differently, I think I would have made the decision faster. Not to say that the decision was made lightly or, didn't deserve enough, that much time. But I remember talking to my news director pretty early on because I wanted to give as much notice. And the first time I spoke to him was months in advance before I left. And I was just telling him, here's how I'm feeling. I know I'm on contract and all of these things. And he told me, the sooner you make a decision, the better your heart will be. And it was true. I was so tormented is very dramatic. But I was so stressed every day. I was going back and forth. Should I do this? Should I not? When realistically, there was only 2 options. I was going to stay or I was going to go. And I think, once ripping that Band-Aid off, it was, okay, I've made the decision. I have to make my peace with it, whatever the decision was going to be. And I thought that was such a good bit of advice from my boss, who quite frankly could have been like, I have you on contract, you're staying, whether you're happy or not, and was very understanding. And if ever anything, he was more encouraging as far as do what you need to do, make the decision, and then you can transition into that mindset faster.
Oh, that's awesome. And so now thinking back, now going into this past few years, you were in that last station for almost 2 years, right? And in media as a whole, like you said, you're a news junkie, 15 years plus. So September of 21, you say, that's it. Enough is enough. And ultimately, you left. So why did you leave your job during the pandemic?
I mean, ultimately, it came down to being with people. No one was allowed to, but we weren't allowed to leave the city. We weren't allowed to leave the state. I basically moved to Chicago right before the pandemic, which I think which also played a part in it sounds so dramatic, in my loneliness. But I didn't really establish close connections in my little bubble that I was possibly able to make connections with. So that's what it came down. I'm like, I'm in this city where I don't know anybody, and all I have is my job. And is that enough? And, we didn't know how long the pandemic was going to last. Quite frankly, I guess we're still in it. We still don't know how long the pandemic is going to last, and how long am I going to wait it out? So that's really what it came down to, is I want to be with people who I care about and in a place where I'm able to form connections. That's the other thing, is when you are on either the morning show or the night show, you are really only able to make friends, make connections with people who are on similar schedules. Not that many people want to eat dinner at 3 p.m. or get off work at 1 a.m. and are sleeping in. And so it's hard to make friends. It's hard to meet people on that schedule. And so it was a combination of all those things that was really isolating, I think. And of course, compounded by the pandemic, when we were all staying inside for safety.
And so when you finally made that decision, how did it impact you, and how did people then respond?
People outside of the industry, I think, were surprised, because, you work your whole life to get to a certain point, and then you make it, and then you're like, what do you mean you're going to leave? But I have to tell you, everyone in the industry, all of my coworkers, all of my former coworkers, everyone was like, yeah, I get it. I get it. Everybody makes those sacrifices, or has made those sacrifices, and knows what you are giving up. And when I started off in news, I have like a very close friend group, and there were 5 of us, and we all started out together, and we worked our way up. And all of us, as of a year and a half ago, again, during the pandemic, are now all out of news. So it definitely, I wasn't the only one, at least in the news industry, and clearly other industries as well. So people in the industry definitely understood. Others were like, what do you mean you're giving up hair and makeup and Emmys and, all of the things you think working in TV is, but it's quite frankly not in practicality.
Yeah, no, and I love how you're shining a light on that too, because I think a lot of folks, sometimes even myself included, take for granted what news anchors actually go through to give us the news. That morning shift, it starts at 6 a.m. and we take it for granted that it's right there. But yeah, they had to get up or get there like 2 a.m., whatever the case may be. So I'm glad you're shining a light on that. And so tell us about some of the things that have happened since you left.
Well, I spent my first Thanksgiving and first Christmas with my family, which
wow,
amazing. Which is amazing.
That was amazing. Did you cook anything?
It's amazing. I cooked a little mini turkey breast. It was mediocre at best, but I'm not used to making any of those things. But it was so wonderful. And I can't tell you, every single year during the Super Bowl, I'm like, I know I'm either going to sleep before the Super Bowl ends, or I'm staying up and my Monday is going to be rough. I know that sounds like, oh, poor woe is me, but it's things, they definitely eat away at you. Every Sunday I'm waking up, I'm like, oh, I need to go to sleep again in like 6 hours. And by go to sleep again, I mean lay down in bed and stare at the ceiling for a couple of hours until hopefully you fall asleep. So being there for holidays has been amazing. My little brother's birthday is the day after Christmas, and I spent that day with him. Yeah, that's been wonderful. And, also forming HCue and starting my own company has definitely been challenging and rewarding and humbling and all of those things. It's a whole new world. To this day, there are still times when I'm eating dinner at 7 p.m. and I'm looking around like, so this, I can just eat dinner? I can just
Right.
eat dinner and not be stressed if I hear
real?
like a fire alarm or it's sirens or it takes some getting used to.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, so tell us a little bit more about HCue Consulting and this new venture that you're now running.
Yes. So I started it with one of my former co-anchors from Las Vegas, Todd Quinones. He and I remained friends even after I left Las Vegas, and we would keep in touch. And we started, I mean, he had similar concerns and reservations about the news industry. He has a little boy, and he was on the Nightside show. So he was missing dinners and football practice and time you can't get back. So we were talking about what could we do if we took the leap and left the only industry career we've ever had. And so we thought, how can we take our skills and apply them to the business world? So that's what we're doing now in that presentation, public speaking world. Since we spent our whole careers trying to figure out the best way to connect with people and deliver messages and make sure that everything we're saying is clear and concise and memorable, we're now teaching that to other possible public speakers or executives who are presenting to a room of people or investors and startups and people like that. And we just want to take our storytelling skills and help other people.
Well, that's great. And when you think about this new side, what has been most rewarding about launching this venture?
First off, just stepping back and realizing that the skills that we have learned, because, once you do the same thing for so long, you forget that they're even skills, right? You're like, oh, this is how I write a story. This is the best sound. This is the best way to present. But we really had to take a step back and figure out exactly what we did and what we've learned to be able to do that well and refine those skills. And then being able to share that with other people and help them connect to their audience or possibly get a new round of funding for their companies and just achieve their goals has been rewarding. And it's just very interesting to be on the other side of things as well.
No, definitely. And what can someone expect? Let's say, look, I need help doing XYZ. I have a startup presentation to potential investors. What could I expect, or what could one of our listeners expect when they come to you all for guidance?
Sure. We actually have a lot of different things. A lot of, people need different skills and refinement and things along those lines. We have an AI technology that we use to figure out, are you talking with your hands too much, like I'm doing right now? Are you making enough eye contact? Are you not making enough eye contact? Things along those lines. So we have actual data and statistics that will take your real-time speech presentation and analyze it. And then we take that data and help you with whatever the result may be. So maybe it is you're rambling, you're talking too long, or your voice goes up and then goes down and it's distracting for people. So we will then take that information and help you to make sure that those things, those weaknesses, I guess, in your presentation aren't weaknesses. And really, it's all about the preparation. If you feel prepared, you're not going to be nervous. And not being nervous allows you to concentrate on being in the moment, being in the room, instead of memorizing, this is my next word, I need to get there. When you feel confident and prepared, you can adjust. You can see, this person is not necessarily picking up this tactic. Let me adjust. Maybe they are more story-based, or maybe they're more data-based, and now I can shift. So we want to provide our clients with all the confidence, all of the skills that they need so then their information can shine, because they know everything better than the reporter, better than anyone in the audience. They're the experts. So we just want to make sure that they are able to be the experts in a confident way.
Well, that's great to hear. And, now when you look back, starting, leaving your job, starting this new venture, today we sit here, things are going well. What have you learned most about yourself throughout this entire process? Because now you're a business owner.
Yeah, I'm a business owner. I would say The thing I learned most, turns out I require a lot of attention. If we're being honest, because now I'm like, oh, there's not 17 people to talk to at all times. And I will, seek more human interaction and connections, and I'm a talker, and I like those things, just that, that building of connection and relationships. So that's definitely been something that I have learned about myself. Actually, I was talking to a client the other day, and they asked, "Do you think that you're a risk taker?" I'm like, "No, I don't think so." And then later I was thinking about it. I'm like, I don't know. I think I probably realistically am. I left my job without really a safety net. So that, I think the more you know about yourself, the more you're able to improve, and the more, not necessarily, oh, this is what I'm great at, but also like, oh, you know what I'm not great at is I'm not great at not having a deadline. Every day in news, I had a deadline. Regardless of what was happening, I'm putting something on at 4 a.m. or 5 p.m. or whatever the case may be. Now, when they're like, oh, let's see how this goes. So it's a learning process. I'm like, okay, I'm going to set my own deadlines just to make sure things get done. So it's been a mixed bag, if we're going to be honest, as far as learning things go. But it's been rewarding and fun, and keeps things interesting instead of doing the same thing every day.
No, I love that. And look, everything on this show, we're all about honesty and transparency. This is a judgment-free zone. So definitely no worries there. Now, one aspect of the show that I really love to get out there, and truthfully, listeners really like this part too, and I do as well, is really about advice for other people. So when you think about those who may be in a similar situation to yours, but are really unsure what to do next, what would you suggest they do?
I don't think you're ever going to feel ready. To this day, I don't feel ready. There are days where I'm like, I'm a genius. And there are days like, I'm going to go broke. There are highs. The highs are high. The lows are low. It's almost like the stock market, right? And you just have to keep going and hope/know the stock market is going to even out. Don't pull your money. Don't pull your money at the low, and keep going. And eventually you do, if you want to, you're going to have to take that leap. I've never spoken to a single business owner who's like, you know what? I felt great and I just quit, and I knew it was the right decision. I don't know if I've ever met anyone like that. I don't know if I ever will meet anyone like that. And quite frankly, I would be concerned if somebody said that, because that does not sound super truthful. I think it's always going to be scary, and that's okay. And then everything you think you are going to accomplish is going to take 10 times longer than than you were anticipating. Minimum. Let me start a website. Do you know how many YouTube videos and research and editing softwares and things I had to research, and everything takes so much longer. And there are days it can be very discouraging and humbling, but it's also so satisfying when you do something that is outside of your comfort zone. Or the day we launched our website, I was like, how did we do this? How did we do this? And it was so exciting and just very rewarding. So keep going. Keep going.
I love that. And just, kind of to throw in something that I experienced as well. I remember launching my first website. You mentioned this, launching your first website. There was so much that went into that. It was so nerve-wracking.
The domain name, like how does this work?
Yeah. Yeah, where
Who's
do
your
I go
host?
to get
I don't know.
exactly.
Google just doesn't do it. I have no idea. And the thing is, when you can hire someone to do it in approximately 45 minutes. So I know it can be done.
Right.
It took me like 4 months, full disclosure. But it's baffling how much you don't know.
Absolutely. All right. So what type of impact are you hoping to have in this next chapter of your professional life?
I want to be able to help people feel confident enough to tell their own stories, right? So no reporter, no matter how great they are, the Anderson Coopers, the Diane Sawyers, Barbara Walters, no matter how great you are, you're not going to have the same impact telling someone else's story as that person is going to have telling their own story. So whether that be if you grew up really shy, or if you have an accent. My parents are, I said I was from Egypt. My parents are obviously from Egypt as well. And my mom sometimes feels a little shy or hesitant to speak, not even necessarily on a stage, but in a room of people. Or the other day, she's like, oh, Alexa didn't understand me. And it made me She's like, am I not saying something correctly? And I'm like, no, it's fine. You're great. Alexa doesn't understand me 90% of the time anyway, either. But, just helping people overcome those barriers and feeling confident enough to tell their story and hopefully then them having an impact. So basically going even further into the background, but helping others do what they want and accomplish their goals.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. And I'm rooting for you in this next phase, right? So I'd love to hear your story.
Thank you.
Well, look, that'll do it for today. I want to thank Yasmeen for taking some time to speak with us. Like I said, loved hearing your story and would love for us to also stay connected. But where can our listeners find you and support some of the work that you're doing?
Sure. I am on all the social platforms. I don't think I'm on TikTok. I think I may be over the age threshold for that. But Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. I am my Yasmeen. I think I'm Yasmeen TV on the social sites. And our website is HCue, HCue. So HCue is Hassan and Quinones. So we were going to be just HCue, but we changed it to HCue as in Q. You're on.
I love that.
A little background for our name. It took, coming up with a name is not also, as again, things you think are going to be easy, not that easy and take a long time. So anyway, that is our origin story there. So we are HCue-LLC.com. And I would love to stay connected with you and anyone else who'd like to just chat or do business. We'll take that too.
Of course. Well, we definitely do business, right? So definitely, if anyone's interested, by all means, give them a shout. So thank you for that. I'll make sure I put that information in the show notes. And look, that'll do it for today's episode. Again, I want to thank Yasmeen Hassan for joining us today. Like I said, I'll put her information in the show notes. And I hope you all have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Yasmeen.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks again for listening to Why I Left. Be sure to join us next time for more stories from the Great Resignation. Visit us at www.whyileft.co. That's whyileft.co. And subscribe to the show on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.